Texas didn't just argue about chili, they once decided that one entire version didn't deserve to compete at all.
Ask a Texan what real chili actually contains, and they will tell you exactly what does not belong in the bowl.
No beans, no tomatoes, no fillers, just beef, dried chili peppers, and a small handful of specific ground spices.
That strict, unwritten definition did not appear overnight. It grew directly out of necessity on the Texas frontier.
Frontier cooks worked with whatever ingredients survived long journeys across dry, unpredictable stretches of land. Beef was plentiful on Texas cattle ranches, while dried chili peppers traveled well without spoiling too quickly.
Combining the two created a filling meal that required no refrigeration and almost no fresh produce whatsoever. Over generations, that practical combination hardened into an unwritten rule about what chili was allowed to contain.
For many Texans, adding beans or tomatoes did not just change the flavor, it broke a long-standing regional tradition.
Understanding why that rule became so strict means going back to the exact conditions that first created it all.
Picture a cattle drive crossing the dry Texas plains, with cooks feeding dozens of hungry ranch hands each night. These trail cooks needed meals that traveled well, cooked quickly, and used ingredients available along the route. Dried beef, dried chili peppers, and salt packed easily into saddlebags without spoiling during long cattle drives. Simmered together slowly over an open fire, these simple ingredients created a thick stew that fed an entire crew. This frontier meal became closely tied to Texas cattle culture, the ranch hands, and the trail drives themselves. As ranching expanded across Texas in the 1800s, this simple stew traveled with every cattle outfit. San Antonio, a growing hub along major cattle trails, became a natural gathering point for this frontier dish.
Travelers passing through San Antonio encountered chili not in restaurants, but from cooks working outdoors at night.
That outdoor, communal style of serving chili would soon turn San Antonio into the dish's unofficial capital city. Texans began treating chili as more than food. It became a marker of frontier identity and their shared history.
If ranch cooks first created chili, it was a group of women in San Antonio who introduced it to the wider public.
Starting in the 1880s, women set up outdoor food stands in San Antonio's central plazas each evening.
They became known as the Chili Queens, serving bowls of spiced beef chili directly from small open-air food carts. Lanterns lit their stands after sunset, drawing locals, traveler, and curious visitors passing through the city. These plazas turned into informal dining rooms, where strangers gathered around shared tables to eat chili together. Visitors from far outside the state of Texas often tasted chili for the very first time at these busy plaza stands. Word of this spicy, hearty dish spread through travelers who carried the experience back to their home states.
By the 1890s, San Antonio's Chili Queens had turned a frontier stew into a recognizable Texas symbol.
Newspapers and travel writers began describing these plaza stands, giving chili its first taste of national attention. Yet as chili's fame spread beyond Texas, other regions began shaping the dish into something entirely their own. Nearly 1,000 miles away, immigrants arriving in Cincinnati were about to reinvent chili completely differently.
In the 1920s, immigrant restaurant owners in Cincinnati began experimenting with their own chili recipes.
Their version drew on Mediterranean spice traditions rather than the cattle drive cooking of the Texas frontier. Cinnamon, allspice, and even chocolate found their way into a simmering meat sauce unlike anything seen in Texas.
Instead of serving this sauce alone in a bowl, Cincinnati cooks ladled it directly over a full plate of spaghetti.
Shredded cheese, chopped onions, and sometimes beans were piled on top, layering flavors the Texas chili never used. This combination struck many outsiders as unusual, a meat sauce built more like a Mediterranean stew than a stew. Yet in Cincinnati, this dish quickly became a beloved regional specialty, served in dedicated chili parlors citywide. By the 1930s, dozens of these parlors operated across Cincinnati, each claiming its own signature recipe. Two American cities now served completely different dishes, both proudly calling their creation authentic chili. On paper, these two dishes shared almost nothing at all beyond a shared name and a base of seasoned ground beef. Texas chili stayed thick, meat-forward, and defiantly bean-free, served alone in a simple, unadorned bowl of beef. Cincinnati chili arrived thinner, sweeter, layered over pasta, and buried under a generous mound of shredded cheese.
If you are enjoying tracing this rivalry as much as I am, subscribe. There is plenty more food history coming.
For Texans, the absence of beans and pasta was never simply a preference, it was a matter of historical accuracy.
For Cincinnati residents, their layered version reflected genuine immigrant heritage, not a betrayal of any tradition.
Each side viewed its own recipe as a direct link to real regional history, not just a personal taste in seasoning. That belief transformed a simple culinary difference into something closer to competing claims of cultural ownership. Once regional pride entered the conversation, disagreements about chili stopped staying quietly contained to kitchens. It was only a matter of time before these two philosophies collided somewhere far more public than a small diner. Starting in the 1960s, organized chili cook-offs began appearing across Texas and several other states.
These competitions invited home cooks and chefs to submit their own chili recipes for public judging and ranking.
Texas organizers, protective of their frontier tradition, wrote strict rules defining what counted as legitimate chili. Under many of these rules, beans, pasta, and other additions were explicitly banned from official competition entries. That meant a Cincinnati-style chili, built entirely around pasta and cheese, could not even qualify to compete. Organizers defended this decision as protecting historical authenticity, not as an attack on any specific city.
Cincinnati-style cooks and fans saw it differently, viewing the exclusion as regional gatekeeping over shared food.
News coverage of these disputes framed the cook-offs as more than contests. They became cultural battlegrounds. Suddenly, a regional rivalry over recipes had a stage large enough to reach audiences across the entire country. Yet even after national attention, the underlying disagreement between these two cities remained largely unresolved. At the center of this entire dispute sits one deceptively simple question: what actually counts as real chili? Texas supporters point to frontier cooking, cattle culture, and the earliest documented recipes tied to that history. Cincinnati supporters point to their own immigrant heritage, arguing tradition does not require Texas cattle drives. Both sides can trace their recipe back through decades of consistent, well-documented regional cooking practices.
Historians studying American food note that immigration constantly reshapes what regions call their traditional dishes.
By that measure, Cincinnati chili is just as historically rooted as Texas chili, only shaped by different origins.
The real disagreement is not about which history is real, but about which history deserves the label authentic.
That distinction explains why cook-off rules felt so controversial to anyone outside the Texas chili tradition.
Excluding a recipe from competition was, in effect, declaring one entire regional history less valid than another. Despite the controversy, neither style disappeared, and neither side ever managed to defeat the other outright. Texas chili remained a fixture of home kitchens, restaurants, and cook-offs across the southwestern United States. Cincinnati chili parlors kept multiplying, eventually growing into regional chains that served thousands weekly. Both versions found loyal audiences who genuinely preferred one style's texture, spice, and presentation over the other.
National food writers began treating the rivalry itself as a feature of American cuisine, not a problem to solve.
Cookbooks started presenting both recipes side by side, letting readers choose their preferred regional tradition. Rather than replacing each other, Texas chili and Cincinnati chili carved out separate, permanent places in America. That permanence only intensified the rivalry, since neither city ever needed to concede a single defeat to survive. With both traditions thriving nationally, the question shifted from which chili would win to why the fight continued.
For Texans, chili represents frontier resilience, cattle culture, and a direct link to their state's founding identity.
For Cincinnati, chili represents immigrant ingenuity, proof that new arrivals could reshape American food entirely. Conceding the debate would mean treating their regional specialty as a lesser imitation instead of its own tradition. Both cities built restaurants, festivals, and civic pride around these competing definitions of a single dish.
Neither city could give up that claim without losing something larger than a recipe, their own culinary identity.
Chili became the center of this decades-long rivalry because two regions built real identity around one dish alone.
Texas treats chili as a historic frontier recipe, meat and spice alone, whose authenticity had to be protected.
Cincinnati treats chili as an immigrant-inspired specialty, spaghetti, cheese, and spice, with its own valid history. The national cook-off controversy exposed this divide, revealing two competing definitions of what real chili means.
Both traditions are genuinely authentic to their own histories, which is exactly why neither side has ever conceded.